Hey guys, welcome back. I've missed you. Um, I'm going to do some math lessons with you guys just like I would if we were at school. So what I'm going to do is we're going to start looking at decimals. I don't know when I'm going to get to see you guys face to face again, and it makes me sad, but I want to make sure that I've done everything that I can to help you in math. So what I want you to do is go get you a piece of paper. You should have some in that notebook that I sent home with you. You each got a spiral notebook. So if you'll grab it and just turn to the first empty page, and I want you to write this down on the top. It says, how do fractions relate to decimals? So when we left, we were talking about fractions. And we had started doing some of this on our morning work. So that's really what we're going to be talking about today. So if you need to pause the video and run get a piece of paper, that's fine. I'm going to keep going. So just hit play when you get back and you can jump back in with me. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you about how a fraction would look as a decimal. And we're only talking about fractions that have a denominator of 10 or a denominator of 100. So I'm going to make a table here. And you can draw this table when you're ready. And at the top, I'm going to write fraction, decimal, and model. And we're going to be talking a lot about the model. When you draw yours, it does not have to be perfect, and you'll understand why in just a few minutes. I'm only going to talk about two fractions with you right now, two types of fractions. Fractions that have a denominator of 10 and fractions that have a denominator of 100. When we talk about decimals and we talk about the place value of decimals, just like our place value, we have ones place, tens place, hundreds place. Decimals have tenths with a th at the end, tenth, and hundredths. These are pieces that are less than a whole. So this is when I think of like money and I have a whole dollar bill. A tenth of that would be like a dime because it would take 10 of those to make the whole. A hundredth of a dollar would be like a penny because it would take 100 of those to make a dollar. Okay, so the way we write the decimals out for our fractions would be the same way we would write it if we were talking about change and dollars. Okay, so let's say our fraction is 3/10. This is not hard to you. We've done this over and over and over again. You're going, I know exactly how much that is. So as a decimal, what that means is I have 0 whole numbers. It would take 10 tenths to be a whole. I don't have 10 tenths. I only have 3. That means I have a fraction of the whole, which means we can also write it as a decimal or a part of the whole. So when we're writing decimals, we're going to have a tenths place, which is going to be right here, and a hundredths place. Okay? So if we have 3/10, then in the tenths place, I would put a 3. Not very hard, right? And if I read this decimal, I would say it has 3/10. And at the bottom, we're going to write out tenths and hundreds as a reminder, but I just want to show you right now how we would write it. And what this would look like is just like if you had a fraction, but we're going to talk about everything like a hundreds grid. So when you think about a hundreds grid, they look like this. And it's got 100 squares. But ours is tenths. So each one of these rows would be a tenth. So I'm going to divide my model into 10 pieces. Remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And we're going to pretend like that was a perfect tenth. Okay? Now our fraction says of these tenths, we have 3. 3/10. So I'm going to shade in 3 of my tenths. So this is 1 of my tenths. This is 2 of my tenths. And this is 3 of my tenths. So when I look at this now, I have 1, 2, 3 tenths or 3/10. It means the same thing. These two things are the same. All 3 of these are different ways to show the same fraction. Okay? It is no different with the hundredths, except that instead of our model looking like this, our model would look like this, because now our whole piece has been divided into 100 little squares, just like when we talk about our base 10 blocks. And the hundreds block has 100 of those little ones on it. Okay, I'm trying to watch because y'all know how sometimes this thing gets blurry. There we go. So this time, our fraction, I'm going to do 35 hundredths. It's not tenths anymore because our denominator is not a 10. Our denominator is 100. So we're now talking about hundredths. Remember, it has a TH on the end. We're not going this way. This way would be whole numbers. This way on the other side of that decimal point is parts of a whole. These are less than a whole. Okay. So again, we have no wholes. We have something that was cut into 100 pieces and we're only using 35 of those 100. So when we write that, it would be, here's the tenths place, here's the hundredths place. We're going to have 35 hundredths, so we're going to write it like this. Okay? I want you to look at that for just a second. So if we were doing this in a model, it would start off the same with our 10. I'm trying to do a better job making them fit. It's going to be real close. And there we go. But this time, instead of stopping at the tenths, we're going to keep going. So I'm going to do 10 lines across to make this hundredths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm not coming around with a ruler. I'm not going to ask you to send in a picture of this. Do it as neatly as you can. Again, if I'm going too fast for you and you need to hit pause, that's fine. Just come back when you're ready. So I want us to look at the fraction. If this is cut into 100 pieces, then how many pieces would we need to shade? Right, we need to shave. We don't need to shave any of them. We need to shade 35 of them. So 35, I want you to look up here at this model. 35 is 3 tens and 5 ones, or 3 tenths. So the 3 tenths is the same. 1 tenth, 2 tenths, 3 tenths. Do you see that? We started off the exact same as we did up here. The difference is we don't use a full tenth for the next one. We use 5 hundredths. 1 hundredth, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So if we look at this, we have 3 tens and 5 hundredths. Or if we counted every single one of these squares, we would have 35 shaded out of 100. Okay, we have done a lot of this on our math morning work. So hopefully this is not too new to you. We've not done a lot with the model, and that's pretty much what we're going to be doing this week. We're going to practice a lot with the models. I'm not going to ask you to draw them a bunch, but I am going to ask you to get used to seeing pictures of them that I will give you and knowing how to read them and knowing how to write the fraction for them and knowing how to write the decimal for them. Okay? We're going to write down at the bottom. You should have room at the bottom of your page. If for some reason you don't, then you can turn to the next page. But I want us to write out our place value chart because we're really good at looking at it when we're talking about ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, all the way up to millions. We've got that. But now we're kind of going backward. So we're going to write here decimal place value. Okay? And we're going to draw a chart. Now, let me draw mine first, and then you can hit pause and you can come back and draw it yourself. But I want to make sure you see how much room you're going to need and all of that. So, I'm going to draw my chart like a big rectangle. And if you'll notice, I'm cutting it, but not in half. I'm going to write some words up here. So I want to make sure that I have plenty of room. Okay. I'm going to draw a line right down the middle. And I'm going to put a big dot right here. That is my decimal. And remember, the decimal, this right here, separates the wholes from the parts. Everything that happens here is more than one whole. Everything that happens here is less than one whole. So if this was money, these would be your dollars. This would be your change. Okay? If I counted up all my dimes and I had more than $1 worth, I would write it over here as another dollar. Okay? If I had a full fraction, 10 tenths, then I would carry it over and it would become a whole, just like we were practicing before we went on, well, I guess break. I don't know what this is. So our first place value, when we're normally talking about place value, is ones. We have the ones place. Then we have the tens place. And then we have the hundreds place, right? Nothing crazy here. I want you to write those in and I want you to draw a line to separate them. Now this is the part where it might be different. Okay? Less than a whole. We have our tenths place. I'm underlining that because, yeah, it's close, but it is not the same. Remember, this is a fractional unit, just like halves, thirds, fourths, fifths, sixths, tenths. That's why we put that on the end. That's your hint that this is not a whole. This is your hint that it takes 10 of these to make one of these. Okay, just like it takes 10 ones to make a 10, 10 tens to make 100, 10 tenths to make one whole. Okay. And just in the same pattern, the next one would be hundredths. And I'm writing sideways, so I'm sorry it's messy. And guess what? It takes 10 hundredths to make 1/10. Just like if we went right here, it would take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of these little squares to make 1/10. Okay? Every time we jump, it takes 10. That's why we call it the base 10 blocks in the base 10 system. Everything works on tens. Now, I'm going to put a number here. I'm going to put 45 point. There's your decimal. 38. So if I was reading this as money, and it would have the dollar sign in front, then it would be $45.38. If we were reading this as a number, it would be 45 and 38 hundredths. Okay, I don't say 3/10, 8 hundredths. 45 and 38 hundredths, just like here. Okay, so here we have 38, here we had 35. This was 35 hundredths. This is 38 hundredths because it took 38 of those little bitty squares to make this. 3 tens and tenths and 8 hundredths. Okay, we're going to practice these a whole lot. All I want you to do today in math is to copy this anchor chart into your notebook so you have it. Okay, these videos are going to be here so you can come back to the video whenever you need to watch it again. If you get confused about something, come back to it. Tomorrow, we're going to practice looking at different decimal charts like this, different models. I'll show you an example. I'm trying to get it out of the bag. So like here's one, and we'll pull out just a bunch of these and we'll talk about what would that look like if we wrote it as a decimal. Okay, here would be the decimal and here would be the words that go with it. And we will practice those. And then you will have some to do on your own at home. And hopefully I can do some videos where you can see my fabulous face because I know you guys miss me terribly. I miss you so much. If you have any questions when you're watching this, You can send me a message in Google Classroom. You can have your parents send me a message on Remind or on Class Tag, and I am more than happy to answer it or to help you out. But I love you guys, and I cannot wait to talk to you again.